My son slapped me in front of hundreds of guests on his wedding night, then demanded I hand over $5 million as if it were an afterthought. My heart didn't break. It hardened quietly from decades of sacrifice they never saw. I slipped my late husband's fountain pen into my clutch and decided I would answer not with tears, but with the law. And that shocking moment was only the first crack in their perfect facade. Before I continue the story, please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment, letting me know where you're watching from. The lobby smelled faintly of lemon polish and lilies. I sat on the bench outside the ballroom and let my hands rest in my lap, the left cupping the right the way I used to hold my husband's when crowds made him restless. His fountain pen rode in my clutch, cool and certain. I touched it and heard his old advice, protect what we built. An empty chair beside me faced the mirrored doors as if he had simply stepped away for ice. I kept that space for him and for me. Muffled bass thumped through the wall the way a heart sounds through a stethoscope. Staff hurried past with crates of candles and bundles of magnolia leaves. I inhaled, counted to 5, and exhaled slowly until the tremor in my chest leveled. The last few weeks rolled across my mind like headlines, but I refused to replay words that could not be unsaid. I had dressed, arrived, and chosen my posture. I would attend my son's wedding. Yes, I would not promise money. At the welcome table, an attendant smoothed a sheet of acrylic that held the seating chart over white paper. I straightened a card that had slipped and read the ink again. The invitation had included a glossy insert cream with gold script post-ceremony signing at 9:30 p.m. A perfectly harmless phrase for most families, not ours. I had photographed it and texted it to my attorney this morning with a single note scene. He answered with 3 words, hold your line. Beside the guest book, the planner's binder lay open to a schedule striped with pastel tabs. A square near the bottom of the page wore a careful circle in gold pen. 9:30 p.m. documents. I was not invited to that page, so I didn't linger. I signed the book, set the pen down, and stepped back enough to watch the flow without blocking anyone who truly belonged behind the table. Down the corridor, the hum of air vents cooled a quiet stretch by the restrooms. I stood there a minute to settle myself and to run through my private checklist. The trust my husband and I created is meant to outlive our mistakes, and if needed, our children's. I can support charity mortgage medicine. I cannot hand over a windfall because feelings are loud. I cannot sign anything I have not read, and I do not sign when eyes are on me. If anyone presses, I breathe first. That is the rule. Back at the welcome area, a young man in a slim black vest looked me over and tilted his head toward a clipboard. Sign here. Staff families. Line is over there, he said, kind but brisk. I'm a guest, I answered. Of course he smiled already, moving to the next task, not cruel so much as busy. The sting was small and quick, like a paper cut under a ring. I rubbed the spot and let it go. The only person who could truly erase me had already tried. The ballroom doors parted a hand's width and spilled a strip of light across the carpet. Someone tested the microphone, counted foxtrot beats, and laughed too loud. I checked my phone. 90 minutes to the line they had drawn in gold ink. I typed a single message to my attorney, I'll keep you posted. No more than that. Anything else would have been a kind of apology, and I owed none. I studied the place cards set in tidy rows beside the welcome arrangement. My name sat where I expected it to sit toward the middle distance, neither honored nor ignored. At the front were clusters reserved for the other family, all pearl edges and long names. Fine. People choose their circles and their photographs. Chairs only tell part of a story. I stepped away to make room for new arrivals and kept my face frank and calm. In a small alcove with a view of magnolia leaves pressed against the glass, I took out the fountain pen and balanced it in my palm the way you'd weigh a peach. If someone asked me on stage to pledge support, I would not do it. If they tried to make a show of generosity, I would not play the part written for me. My pulse beat at my wrist, but each breath I took made the tempo steadier. I could sit through music and toasts and the slow spin of a first dance without offering anything but decent attention. The bartender rolled a cart past with rows of flutes, a faint bell of glass following him down the hall. A woman in a silver dress paused to fix her heel and offered me a polite smile, the kind you save for familiar strangers. I returned it and looked at the double doors again. Nights like this once meant pinning a boutonniere, tucking a speech, and telling my husband to breathe. There would be no gentle coaching tonight. Whatever this evening asked of me would be earned, not bought. I set my fingers on the seam of my clutch until the reflex soothe pay-appease cooled like a match gone dark. Peace that is bought ends when the receipt fades. The steadier kind asks you to stand when pushed. I pictured the pen, its nib stained by years of signatures that made a home. If pressure came, I would let it pass, the way water takes the shape of stone and keeps moving. I would not be the show, I would be sure. A bell chimed somewhere deeper in the hotel, and the doors to the ballroom swung wider. The room flashed alive chandeliers, throwing coins of light onto glass waiters, gliding a photographer backing into a topiary to get his angle. I smoothed my black dress, tucked the pen back into my clutch, and squared my shoulders. My husband's voice seemed to ride the air beside me, not a ghost, just a habit. Protect what we built. I nodded once to him or to myself and stepped into the light. The ballroom doors had barely opened when the MC's voice softened across the room and found me at the threshold. "Mrs. Vexler, would you join the couple up front?" Polite practiced, already amplified. I felt dozens of faces pivot the way sunflowers turn to a passing sun. I lifted my chin and stepped forward. Breath measured the way a nurse once taught me for long scans in for 4 hold, for 4 out for 6. The band hit a hush. My heels tapped a calm rhythm I intended to keep. At the seating chart podium, an usher intercepted with the helpful smile of someone protecting order. He checked the acrylic grid, then plucked a cream card from a tray. M. Vexley, he read, offering it like a found coin. The letter switch scraped its nails across my last name. He gestured toward a table beside the swinging service door, where a draft puffed the linens and a bus tub waited like a second guest. Just there. I touched the card with 2 fingers. "It's Vexler," I said quietly. "Thank you." I did not argue the chair. Some fights spend more than they win. A woman in sequins drifted by perfume, bright as citrus. Family or staff families line. She chirped eyes already moving. "Mother of the groom." I answered, not raising my voice, not lowering my gaze. The words hung a fraction longer than she expected. She made a small O and pressed on. I let it pass through me the way I let air move through leaves sound without root. Dignity often sounds like less than it carries. Tonight I would carry it all the same. Near the steps, the planner's assistant stood with a tablet cradled like a menu. A document glowed on the screen, crisp and ready gift letter, $5 million, followed by blanks for names and typeface tidy assurances. A stylus clicked in a clip along its edge. "We'll just need your touch here after the toast," she whispered, as if offering me a mint. I let my eyes rest on the title long enough to make a record in my own mind, then nodded the way one nods to whether noted, not obeyed. At the foot of the stairs, my son leaned in from the aisle tie, newly tightened smile taut. "Mom, just sign." "It's for us," he said, without looking at me, eyes aimed past to the photographer's lens. Isolde's hand settled on his arm, her smile rehearsed toward the crowd. I answered with 2 letters that weighed more than any figure on the tablet. No. Not sharp, not soft, just the truth spoken at room temperature. Let the microphones chase applause, I would chase oxygen. The MC lifted the mic again. "Ladies and gentlemen, a moment to celebrate the incredible generosity of the groom's mother," he sang, opening his free hand toward me as if unveiling a monument. "After the vows, she'll honor the couple with a special gift that begins their future tonight." Heads turned like a tide. I felt the heat of their expectation touch my face and stop there as if it had met glass. Promises are not true because a microphone repeats them. The microphone came to me. I took it anchored my shoulders and saw the first row in clear detail, a sprig falling from a boutonniere, a lipstick print on a water glass, the way nerves make people grip utensils. "Thank you all for being here," I said. "Tonight is about their vows. I hope you'll celebrate them for who they are to each other, not for what anyone else can give." I smiled once to the room, once to myself, and returned the mic. I had not confirmed a thing. We shifted 3 steps aside into the wing's narrow shade. The assistant offered the stylus with 2 hands expectation, wrapped as courtesy. I folded mine together at my waist, the fountain pen cool inside my clutch like a coin under the tongue. Corbin's whisper tightened. "Sign it." I glanced at the digital clock above the soundboard, 8:03. "No," I said again and let the silence do the rest. Pressure loves an echo. I gave it a wall. An usher appeared at my elbow, officiant and well-meaning. "This way, ma'am," he said, guiding me back toward the table by the service door. I sat a moment as the entrance draft lifted the edge of my skirt and set it down again. Plates passed inches from my shoulder. The door swung in a rhythm that nicked the minutes thin. I watched the room the way you watch weather clear a patience with edges. Being placed there did not make me small. It made their plan obvious. From that chair by the draft, I looked back at the stage and felt the music swell into its next cue. I set my phone low against my clutch and texted my attorney a single word, "watching." Then I stood smoothing my skirt once. I did not need a better seat to hold my ground. I needed only my feet, my breath, and the line I would not cross. The MC reset his smile as if winding a clock. "A moment of gratitude," he said, and the mic slid into my hands again. Center stage felt oddly small, a square of brightness inside a winter of eyes. I kept my breath even and my words plain. "Thank you for coming to witness their vows," I said. "I'm proud of my son, and I wish them courage and kindness." I let silence rest where other people place money. No numbers, no pledges, only the 2 things a marriage can actually spend. He reclaimed the microphone like a baton and swung his voice toward the chandeliers. "And tonight," he announced, "we are honored by a historic gift from the groom's mother, $5 million to start their new life." Gasps lifted like a flock. Phones rose. I felt heat walk up my cheeks and stop at the line I keep for myself. I shook my head real. I stepped to the edge where light thins and spoke into the mic I still held. "I did not pledge any money tonight." The room shifted. Isolde's smile held like lacquer. Corbin's jaw found a hard angle that did not belong to the boy who used to fall asleep in car seats, hand on his father's sleeve. I placed the mic back on its stand, the way you set down a glass you will not refill. A tablet, bright with clean fonts, appeared between me and the aisle, the stylus perched like a small threat. Gift letter. $5 million, the title read, "Tidy." "No," I said, folding my hands at my waist. I could have said more, but I have learned that a full stop is an adult sentence. The assistant blinked, then glanced toward Isolde. Isolde did not blink. Corbin leaned in at the stairs where carpet met marble, his voice low enough to pass for love to anyone watching. "Don't embarrass me," he said. The words brushed my ear and left grit. Before I could answer, his hand flashed a lesson my body would not forget, a short, flat slap that rang without echo. My glasses left my face, skated across marble, and clicked to a stop. The room held its breath with me. Somewhere a phone captured both our silhouettes as proof. I felt the old training rise breathe first. I reached for my glasses, found them by the glint, and set them back on my nose with a steadiness I wished I could send back through time to every woman who had ever needed it. The chandelier light fractured once, then settled. I did not search faces for permission to leave. Permission was mine to grant. I walked under the same chandeliers that had been asked to witness generosity and had witnessed something else. The bass softened to a distant throb behind me as if the band had been wrapped in quilts. The doorman opened without question. The hallway smelled of coffee and cold air. I did not hurry. Running would have signed something on their tablet that no court could erase. The valet lot gave me the Sky Houston's wide, low blue going dark at the edges. I slid into my car, closed the door, and sat with my husband's fountain pen pressed into my palm until the tremor inside me learned my pulse again. Then I called Dorian. "It happened," I said. "File the petition." He did not ask which one. We'd spoken the language of contingencies all week. I forwarded the photo of the glossy insert with the 9:30 line and typed a brief note, "Public demand for a gift I never promised," followed by physical strike. Dorian's reply came back as if he had been standing next to my breath. "Understood. E-filing protective petition now." Harlan looped. "Yes." I dialed Harlan before the dots finished hopping. "Prepare the trustee letter, confirming restrictions," I said. "No discretionary disbursement under duress and no authority to pledge funds at events. Already draft." Dorian texted process server en route, ETA 18. I pictured a leather folder and the silence that comes with papers people cannot talk past. "I'll stand by the foyer when they arrive," I replied. I would not argue inside, not with Corbin's temper and the crowd's appetite. Paper would talk in a voice even microphones respect. On the passenger seat, I placed the clutch and opened the Notes app, documenting time location names, present wording used by the MC, habit from years of hospital forms and insurance calls. If you don't write a night down, it rewrites you. I photographed the faint red mark ghosting my cheek in the rear view, not for sympathy, for a timestamp. I titled the note with today's date and the words, "Protect what we built because even memory needs a file name." I added the clock reading and the weather humid and the way the ceiling light in the car made a small halo on leather that wasn't holy at all. For a minute, I sat with the engine off and listened to the lot, a suitcase wheel, a laugh from a taxi, the faint rattle of a palm frond against glass. What I would not do, plead explain, return to the stage to make the room comfortable. What I would do, hold the lines, let policy and signatures do their work, and make space for the part of me that still remembered a small boy who once pressed a dandelion into my hand and called it a crown. I checked the time, 8:13, then smoothed my dress and slid the pen back into my clutch. The door caught, then closed. I walked toward the lighted doors, not to repair what had broken, but to stand where the next right thing would happen. The band swelled again inside a practiced rise, the kind that convinces strangers love is simple. Tonight, love would have to be stronger than simple. He arrived the way rain starts in Houston, quiet certain. A man in a dark suit crossed the foyer with a leather folder tucked to his ribs. I stepped aside from the ballroom doors. "Service of process," he said, showing the stamped cover sheet to staff, then to me. Dorian's name sat where it belonged. The paper looked calm, and that calm moved through my chest. At the threshold, he read clearly enough for those in earshot, cease and desist. Petition e-filed at 8:16 p.m. Allegations of coercion and elder financial abuse. Request for temporary relief. The word relief changed the gravity. Radios hushed, the bass line faltered like a heartbeat, choosing a slower song. I didn't fill the quiet. Paper would. The officiant stepped forward, took the papers without drama, and flipped to the highlighted sections. He didn't look at anyone, only the words. Pending hearing, he said evenly, letting the phrase land as boundary, not threat. He nodded to the server, then to the manager. In the room, plans began to lose oxygen. At the dais, he lifted the marriage register from a velvet case and closed it with a careful click that traveled farther than sound. I cannot proceed under these conditions. No anger, just fact. A single ribbon of breath drew in from the guests. My own lungs lengthened, anchored. The venue manager moved like a control room hand. At the console, he lowered faders until the band became a hush, nodded to lighting to drop the spotlight, and keyed his radio. Mark event restricted until further notice. 2 guards adjusted their stance. The door team softened into a check. Order replaced spectacle with the efficiency of a switch. Safety followed sound. Staff formed a gentle line across the entry corridor. No barricade, only bodies suggesting direction. A server rerouted champagne to the side hall. The DJ slid to ambient. The room's temperature dropped a degree that had nothing to do with air. People look smaller when a script leaves them. Near the dais, a knot of voices tried to grow. "It's a misunderstanding," someone insisted. "We can sort it after the vows." The officiant didn't raise his voice. My code bars me from solemnizing under coercion. The word code set like a post in wet earth. The server stood with hands at rest the way people wait when the next step isn't theirs. Corbin stared at the closed book as if it had locked him in. I stayed at the foyer line where marble meets carpet. The manager met my eye and treated me as a person, not a problem. I gave him one sentence. "Please keep everyone safe." He nodded. "Yes, ma'am." That was the only authority I wanted. Let the systems designed for nights like this do their work. Phones came down. A few guests stepped out to call rides, their voices thin the way sound gets when a party ends before cake. Someone collected tablets and slid them under the console. The band set instruments on their stands like tools at shift's end. The celebratory script had lost its verbs. The room recalculated. The planner's assistant slipped to my shoulder breath a little fast. "I have audio you should hear," she said. I angled toward the wall, giving us a small shelter. "Play it from the start." Her thumb trembled on glass. The file was stamped during rehearsal. She cupped the speaker. "The MC will tease the 5 million gift before vows. Isolde Bright. She'll cave on stage. If she hesitates, spotlight her." A whisper. "Are you sure, Corbin Lower? She owes me this." Chairs scraped. A laugh that wasn't joy. I didn't flinch. Evidence works best on level ground. She looked up, apology forming. I spared her the burden. "Thank you for recording. Send it to this number." I read Dorian's cell. She forwarded the file and watched the bar crawl. When the check appeared, the air around us felt less crowded. Paper had spoken, now sound joined it. The manager's radio chirped. "HPD liaison standby if needed. Copy," he said then to me. "We have a quiet room if you prefer. Here is fine." Through the doors, I saw the officiant return the register to its case and rest both hands on the lid as if blessing a pause. That steadied me more than any apology could. Isolde approached halfway and stopped measuring the distance as if it were a cost. "We can fix this," she said, reaching for neutral. "Fix what policy forbids?" I asked. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Not every door explains open. The process server checked his watch and walked back toward the stage to complete a note of service with the manager's counter signature. The assistant beside me whispered, "Do you want me to speak up? Only if asked?" I said, "You've done enough." We looked at the phone once more as if it were a candle. From deep in the ballroom, a child laughed a sound from another city. I pressed my clutch and felt my husband's fountain pen answer with its small, reliable weight. Nights define themselves by what people choose when a script collapses. I chose systems that keep people from harm sentences that fit on stamped pages and the clean space that opens when music goes quiet enough to hear your own name. The manager logged the restriction and briefed security. The efficiency felt like a hand at my back. I texted, "Dorian audio confirms staging and spotlight trigger, holding by foyer." He replied, "Checkmark chain of custody preserved." The assistant whispered, "They plan to drag you to sign." I nodded. "Not tonight. Now." "Right." Calla steadied the phone against her palm and lowered her voice. We stood half-turned to the wall out of the aisle of eyes and whispers. "From the top," I said. She tapped the screen. A blue line crept forward. Tinny room sound filled the small space between us chairs. Drag a cough, the testy squeak of a mic. I braced the way you do when a doctor opens a chart. My cheeks still warmed under the light. My breath narrowed to make more room for listening. "Let it play," I added softly. On the recording, the MC's rehearsal voice lost its polish. "After vows, we bring Mom up, hand her the stylus, don't ask, just frame it as done." Laughter dented the air. A second voice chimed, "Spotlight is the cue." Isolde's tone slid in bright with certainty. "She'll thank us once she sees the announcement on the screens." Someone asked if I would balk. Corbin's answer landed dull. "She won't risk looking cheap." The hiss of a fader, a clink of glass. They were describing me as if I were a prop. Screenshots don't forget. Calla murmured and scrolled to a text thread. Gray bubbles stacked like tiles. Seat her by the door. Keep her off camera till the gift. Coordinate with AV for lower third's mother's gift. $5,000. Timestamps showed 30 minutes before guests arrived. Initials tagged each instruction. Another line. Move Mike B to aisle edge short walk, less time to think. The cruelty was small and efficient the way office memos are. Will you forward the thread to my attorney, I asked. Include your number and a sentence that you're available to give a statement. She hesitated only long enough to breathe. Yes. Her thumbs moved. I dictated Dorian's email. She added I recorded rehearsal audio. I was directed to place the mother near the service door. I glanced at her. You did the right thing by saving this, I said. Color rose in her face and steadied. I wasn't sure until now. We walked with the manager to a side corridor and stopped outside the security office door. We'll need camera footage covering the stage stairs and the welcome table, I said, and an incident report. He had the look of a man who understands forms better than feelings. He radioed the operator pull 1958 to 2010, flag 2002. To me, there are multiple angles. We'll export clips and stills with timestamps. Through the doorway, a monitor showed a grid lobby stage, left stage, right back alcove. The manager cycled to the moment, then paused. On the screen, my glasses slid across marble, a small arc of glare. My hand went to my cheek in a reflex that read as restraint, not drama. A guest's phone lifted in the corner like a second witness raising a hand. The still frame held more courtesy than the room had. The operator opened a new form on a tall counter. Date auto-filled. Time 8:02 p.m. Location ballroom dais stairs. Parties list added. He toggled a line item, elder abuse concern, and the checkbox turned blue. We'll attach stills, then the clip, he said. A preliminary number will print in a minute. Calla swallowed and squared her shoulders, as if the form had moved some weight from her to the page. Chain of custody is a phrase that sounds colder than it is. It means we protect the truth from being handled too much. The manager printed the report stub and slid it to me. Prelim 23-1842, he said. I initialed the request for footage, wrote Dorian's email again to avoid a typo, and confirmed automatic delivery. My pen stroke steadied. The fountain pen pressed comfort into my fingers through the clutch. In the quiet bend of corridor, away from the hiss of radios, Calla's breath lengthened. Why aren't you shouting? She asked, almost whispering it to herself. Because shouting turns me into the story, I said. Tonight, the story is their plan. We let the paper speak, and we let the camera remember. She exhaled like someone stepping off a train onto steady ground. Okay. The printer chattered. A narrow strip curled forward. The manager tore it free, stamped the time, and slid it to me with 2 sleeves. We'll seal copies for counsel, he said. The operator saved the export to an evidence drive labeled by date. A blue bar crept across the screen. Stills to email in 60 seconds, clip in 5. My phone buzzed. Dorian wrote, received. Standing by for attachments. A second line followed with the docket stamp and the hearing date. I felt the old urge to explain to make someone understand rise and fall without action. There was nothing to sell in words. Please keep everyone safe, I told the manager. Yes, ma'am. A server rerouted champagne away from the doors. The DJ lowered the mix to a quiet track that did not pretend joy. Even the flowers looked relieved when the room stopped performing at them. 2 chimes first, the still image with the report number in its corner, then Calla's forward of the text thread with her name and number, and one line that mattered, I am available to testify to planning instructions given at rehearsal. I sent both to Dorian without commentary and closed my clutch. The click sounded like ending a chapter. At the threshold, guests who had been filming shifted to silence. A handful slipped to the curb to call cars. Others hovered in the dim with the courtesy that follows a storm nobody can deny. I took one breath, then another. My resolve did not have edges. It had a center. I was not here to punish. I was here to end the fantasy that I could be written into their script against my will. A baritone rose over the hush from inside a voice that could talk a room back from a cliff. Bramwell Knox. Isolde's father cleared his throat at the mic. I moved 2 steps closer to the threshold so the words would carry cleanly. He thanked the guests for patience, then paused with the weight of a ledger. In light of new information, he said, "Our family is making a decision." The air gathered itself, ready to change shape. I set my hand on my clutch and waited. Bramwell's baritone cut through the ballroom's glitter. From the foyer threshold, I held my line, my hand on my clutch. "Thank you," he said into the mic eyes, sweeping the room until the chatter dried. I felt the air change cleaner, colder. He skipped sentiment. In light of recent developments, he began, "I need to address something that is not about flowers or toasts." His thumb touched a phone. A staffer at the AV cart nodded. A side screen brightened with a date-stamped email header subject line, "Capital call immediate." Heads turned. I didn't move. Bramwell squared his shoulders. "Our family cannot proceed with financial commitments while a capital call of this magnitude is unresolved and while questions have been raised about coercion tonight." He let the word hang. Then clearly effective immediately, our support is withdrawn until circumstances are clarified. The sentence landed. Around the dais, a breath collapsed into quiet. I watched faces under the white light. Isolde kept a trained smile that flickered at the edges, the way a candle gutters when a door opens. Corbin's jaw set. He scanned the tables as if the script might be hiding there. Phones tilted down. A bridesmaid chewed her lip. Someone at the bar stopped pouring. Across the aisle, Ophelia Knox stood, very straight hands resting lightly at her waist. She found me at the threshold and held my gaze for one steady second, not pity, not apology, only recognition. It reached. I tipped my head a fraction the language older women use. By the floral arch, she lifted her wrist toward the corsage Bramwell had pinned there an hour earlier. Cream gardenias, a ribbon of gold. With deliberate fingers, she unfastened it, found the silver clasp, and eased it free. She set the flowers on the edge of the dais, not tossed, not crushed, set like a statement. A few guests saw. Most felt it. Silence carried. I did not step forward. I did not correct anyone or reach for a stage that was no longer mine to touch. I kept my promise, let policy and paper speak. The officiant's register remained closed beside him. The side screen with the capital call glowed like a lighthouse on a shallow coast. The room had a horizon again. Near the dais, Corbin leaned toward Bramwell, voice low and tight. Isolde leaned in, too, lips moving about optics and guests and saving face. Bramwell listened without nodding. He tapped the email header once the date-time sender and let his hand fall. He wasn't cruel. He was immovable. Ophelia glanced back to me from the arch. No flourish, just a small, nearly hidden nod that said I see it. It found the place inside my chest that had been braced since 8:02 and eased it. I answered with the smallest smile I could manage and still be honest. The venue manager lifted a hand toward the DJ. The music eased from pulse to hush, then to a thin, ambient thread you could step over. Spotlights blinked out, leaving ordinary hotel light to do the work. A murmur cracked and ran through the room. Somewhere a fork chimed gently against a plate and fell still. The party script slipped. I kept my post at the threshold. Security stayed soft-edged present without theater. Staff adjusted routes. The planner stared at her tablet. The door was already open. What I felt was not triumph. It was steadiness earned after standing very still and not flinching. Ophelia's corsage lay like a white comma beside the dais. I let the quiet speak. Corbin tried once more, head bent toward Bramwell, palm up. Isolde counted breaths, then checked the room for cameras. On the screen, the email header did not soften. Facts seldom do. What held me upright was simple, the difference between noise and proof. I could feel the Houston humidity curling at the doorway, the faint scent of magnolia from the lobby arrangement, the weight of my clutch against my palm. None of it asked me to speak. Paper would do that. In the corner, a young server met my eyes and gave the smallest shrug, a human apology for a night that had gone sideways. I answered with a nod. Across the floor, a grandmother I did not know eased herself into a chair and folded her cane across her lap. She stared at the corsage the way women read rings and photographs, as if it could tell the whole truth in one look. I thought of the years it took to build the nest egg they tried to raid of my husband's hand, guiding mine over signatures of his quiet warning, "Protect what we built." I thought of the pen in my purse, heavier than gold because it belonged to a promise. I didn't need the room to like me. I needed the rules to hold, and they were holding. From the DJ booth, the volume slid down another notch. The venue manager raised his radio and spoke in a tone that carried calm more than authority. I couldn't make out every word from the foyer, but I heard the shape of it reduced to ambient. Stand by for status change. Beside him, a technician removed a spotlight bulb and set it into a foam cradle. Making things safe never asks for applause. I stayed where I was, hand around the cool barrel of my late husband's fountain pen inside my clutch. Across the room, Ophelia folded her hands and stepped back from the arch. The white comma stayed on the dais. The DJ slid the volume to a hush while the venue manager lifted his radio and spoke again. The spotlight died. A murmur broke and flattened into quiet. From my threshold, I watched the room understand that the party was no longer in its hands, and for the first time all evening, my breath came and went without asking. The DJ's hand slid the fader down until the bass became a breath. Forks stopped chiming. Conversations arrived in full sentences the way surf sounds when the wind dies. From my place at the foyer line, I stood still, spine long clutch, warm under my palm. The room did not know what to do with quiet. Above the dais, a single click and the spotlight surrendered. House lights flattened, everything flowers looked like silk instead of spring sequins like foil. A few phones lowered as if embarrassed to be caught staring. Without the cone of light, people had to see each other. On the service corridor radio, the manager said steady as a metronome. One-way traffic, no refills for now. Trays arced to new routes. A soft perimeter formed around the dais, not a barricade, a suggestion. Staff were kind, practiced. Order replaced spectacle. Out in the lobby, the digital board blinked. Event listings dissolved to a stark banner. Ceremony on hold time. Stamped to the minute. Guests drifted out to make sure their eyes were telling the truth. The marble threw back the words in a watery mirror. Public ink, not rumor. At the check-in table, a small, careful line formed. A woman in blue asked if her envelope could be held until clarity. A man patted his jacket and decided to wait. Staff nodded, no arguments. Gifts turned around without a speech from me. I breathed and let gravity work. My phone buzzed. Can we talk off stage? No name. I locked the screen and kept my gaze on the threshold. Boundaries are easier to hold when the world has edges. The board gave us edges. I would not be coached to a corner again. Between tables, whisper currents braided their own versions. Someone said a lawyer. Someone else said a misunderstanding. Another mouthed elder abuse, like it burned. I did not correct them. The board and the dimmed room did the talking better than I could. Let the facts patrol the aisles. Near a lobby column, a guest lifted her phone and framed the glowing board. Ceremony on hold, she narrated in a quick whisper due to something with the groom's mom and a financial document. The red dot reflected in the marble. She posted before the elevator bell finished its chime. Screens began to glow a soft collective blue. What happened? Wait, who slapped who? Is this legal comment stacked like plates? A still image surfaced my glasses skidding across marble stitched beside the lobby banner. Ache moved through me thin as wire and passed. Relief followed. Not joy, just rightness. The echo came back into the room, guests filming the stage from their seats, pointing their phones the way people point weather vanes. Whatever this had been, it was no longer a private party sealed by music. It was a room inside a headline. I held my place, calm, engaged like a gear. Behind the glass, the board kept its spare sentence. A banking notification slid across my screen. Attempted e-sign transaction flagged, contact institution. I tilted the phone just enough to read the header and then set it face down against my clutch. The board behind the doors held its line. So did I. There are nights to argue and nights to let the world hear itself. This was the second kind. By the welcome table, a teenager in a tux shuffled, uncertain, then stepped aside for his grandmother, who whispered to the attendant that she would rather deliver her card next week when things are settled. The attendant thanked her as if she had offered help instead of hesitation. When respect is quiet, it is still respect. I let my shoulders ease a fraction and felt the weight of my clutch settle ordinary again. The manager walked a slow circuit, not rushing anyone, only adjusting the flow. "Restrooms this way," he said to a couple looking lost, "and we'll update you as soon as we can to a cluster near the bar." A server with a tray of untouched flutes met my eyes. We both nodded. They pivoted toward the kitchen, leaving a clear path to the foyer. Policy wearing a human face. In the glow of screens, narratives bloomed and tangled. A cousin announced he had the full story and was corrected gently, and then less gently, by three strangers who had only the same facts. Everyone else had board lights the hush. Someone typed, "Good for her for not making a scene." Someone else wrote, "Imagine asking your mother on a mic." I did not savor any of it. I remembered my husband's voice. Protect what we built. Protection can look like stillness. More pings, a short clip of the DJ sliding the fader. A shot of the officiant closing the book, a frame of Opheli's corsage resting alone by the arch. The captions varied, but the shape was the same, a celebration paused by consequence. It is rare for a room to hear itself in real time, rarer still for it to change its posture when it does. I watch spines adjust chairs, inch in hands drop from applause to lap. A woman I did not know approached me at the threshold and stopped at a respectful distance. "Ma'am," she said, "I hope you're all right." I told her I was safe and thanked her for asking. She did not ask for details. She did not offer advice. She returned to her seat as if she had passed a small, necessary test. Kindness moves differently than curiosity. It lands and stays. Behind the doors, the wedding planner made tight circles with her pen, counting silent beats, trying to will the schedule back into existence. Schedules rarely survive contact with truth. I watched her inhale, exhale, and finally lower the pen. Somewhere, a child laughed at something unrelated. Life kept happening in the margins. Parties forget that until the music stops. The board in the lobby refreshed its timestamp with a small pulse. A hotel guest with a suitcase paused, read, and moved on. Outside this circle, the world went on the way it always does. I like that about cities. Your personal catastrophe is a line in their day. It keeps you from believing the story is the only story. Even tonight, that helped. My phone buzzed again with the same unsaved number, and then a second time with a different one. I let both sink back into silence. If someone had something to say that mattered, they could say it, where policy could hear it too. My attorney's earlier message sat like a paperweight in my mind. Stand by. We are fine. Near the arch, Corbin's shoulders were a study in angles tight, then looser, then rigid again. Isolde's smile returned in brief professional flashes, the kind used for headshots. Neither came to the foyer. They didn't need to. The room they had rented had become a witness, and witnesses do not take instruction from the people being witnessed. I stayed exactly where I was, a boundary drawn with breath. When the elevator opened and a new handful of guests stepped off, they slowed, read the board and did what the others had done, pulled out phones, texted babysitters, asked for water, waited. Waiting is an underrated skill in a crisis. It keeps people from saying things they will have to apologize for in better light. The house lights were honest light. They made us all more careful. I kept my place steady at bay. A banner slid across my phone like a small storm front. Attempted e-sign transaction flagged. I stood beneath the lobby board's glow and stepped into the side lounge, where the carpet hushed every footfall. I set my clutch on the arm of a chair, squared the screen to my glasses, and let myself read every word without flinching. The message opened to clean lines and numbers, time device type a mismatched IP, and a line in bold denied under trust restrictions. Below it, the bank asked me to confirm whether I had attempted the withdrawal. Relief came first sharp as air after thunder. Then anger, not hot, but exact, like a pencil point pressed to paper. Someone had pushed a door that was never theirs. I clicked the secure link answered in 2 words, "Not me," and tapped escalate. A case number bloomed blue, anchoring the thread. I forwarded the alert to Dorian with a brief note tie to petition keep chain intact. The screen blinked its tiny airplane, and I felt the strange calm that only procedure gives. Not victory, simply edges returning to their places. Receipts do not blink. I opened my sent mail and scrolled to last night's message, the one I had typed, standing at my kitchen counter with the fountain pen beside the sink. Subject line empty. Body declined. Beneath it, the system showed delivered and read. Time-stamped before sunset. I let the facts steady my breath. I did not rehearse what I might say. The documents already spoke. I forwarded that thread as well, adding the new case number. Then I rose, took my clutch, and walked back toward the ballroom doors. I did not hurry. Haste feels like apology, and I had none to give. The foyer smelled faintly of magnolia and steam trays, the ordinary scents of a Saturday night doing their best to cover a lesson. At the threshold, the venue manager met my eye. "Ma'am," he said the word neutral and respectful at once. I asked for a brief speaker patch so the trustee could state terms to the room. He checked policy, nodded once, and led me to a side console where a spare microphone waited beside a small panel of sliders. Harlan answered on the second ring. I pressed speaker, and the manager gave the channel a whisper of volume. "This is Harlan Ames, trustee," he said, voice carrying like a plumb line. "The Vexler Trust is spendthrift. The beneficiary cannot transfer, pledge assign, or compel distributions. Any attempted withdrawal without trustee authorization is void and reportable." His words moved across the front tables as if someone had opened a window and let better air in. He continued level and spare. "There is no $5 million gift. A written decline was sent prior to this event and acknowledged by receipt. We have bank verification of an attempted unauthorized action tonight. Controls worked as designed." The manager eased the fader down. The room settled into a hush that was not theatrical, only human. Some people looked at the lobby board through the glass reading, "Ceremony on hold for the 5th time," as if repetition could erase it. Others looked at me. I offered no commentary, only a small nod to the staff and a thank you to the manager under my breath. I ended the call and tucked the phone away. The fountain pen waited in my clutch, smooth and familiar under my fingertips, a line back to the promises my husband and I made at a kitchen table years ago. My phone chimed again. Dorian case numbers updated. Ready when you are. I kept my hand on the pen a heartbeat longer, letting its weight remind me who I still was. What remains is mine to govern my signature, my steadiness, my choice of when to speak and when to let paper do the talking. I stepped away from the console and took my place at the foyer line again. Across the room, the corsage still sat where Ophélie had left it, a small, silent vow. The night had rearranged itself. We had not raised our voices. We had simply told the truth and let it stand. The manager returned the handset to its cradle and offered me a paper cup of water. I did not realize how dry my mouth had become until the first sip touched my tongue. In the reflection of the glass doors, I saw a small woman in a black dress, standing straighter than she had an hour ago. A few guests drifted near the way people gather at a museum label, curious but careful. No one asked for a statement. They could read the one already written in the air, "Nothing moves past a locked signature." Down the hall, the florist adjusted a column of magnolia leaves that had lost their perfect arc. Petals are honest. They sag when they are tired, and no amount of spotlight can pretend otherwise. I thought of the years when I carried checkbooks and casseroles and calendars, keeping a family stitched together with quiet thread. Love is work, and I had done mine. That is why the pen mattered. It was not a weapon. It was a boundary with ink, a way to say I choose where the river of our work will run. I would not let it be diverted by demand. No. My attorney's message chimed again. Elder abuse intake is open for calls tonight. Want me to dial them in? I walked into the quieter corridor where the carpet met a line of cool tile and answered, no, I'll make that call myself. Then I drew a breath that filled my ribs without shaking and looked through the glass at the board's steady sentence. Some nights authority wears a suit. Tonight it wore a system that did not blink. The board still read, on hold steady as metronomes, as ever. The manager unlocked a glassed-in business alcove and eased the door closed behind me. The room smelled faintly of toner and lemon cleaner. I set my phone in clutch on the laminate desk, took the armless chair, and let my shoulders lower one notch. Quiet is a kind of permission. I opened the Notes app where I'd kept times and names, then set it aside. This call needed my voice, not narration. I dialed the Elder Abuse hotline. A woman answered on the second ring, warm practiced. I gave my name, my age, the hotel, the city. Tell me what happened, she said. I kept it plain, a public slap from my adult son, after I declined to sign a $5 million gift letter on stage pressure before and during my refusal. She did not interrupt. The keys on her end clicked like rain. She asked for the hour and minute. 8:02, I said, captured on venue camera and noted in a preliminary incident report. She asked whether there were witnesses willing to be contacted. I listed the officiant, the planner's assistant, the venue manager. She repeated each name, spelled them back, asked for a callback number, and read it to confirm. Breathing got easier with every box she checked. Do you feel safe right now? She asked. Yes, I said. I'm in a private room. Staff know where I am. My attorney is on standby. She summarized my statement, added the venue address, and created a file. Your case number is... She read a string of letters and digits twice, and I'm sending you a secure summary by email. You may forward it to your attorney. I wrote the number on a sticky from the desk, the ink steady in my hand. Is there anything else you need tonight? She asked. Only this, I said. Please note that the pressure centered on my signature and finances, not on reconciliation. She understood. We have that. Her voice softened. You did the right thing calling. We ended the call with a shared thank you, the kind grown people use when there's no need to say more. I forwarded the case number to Dorian. His reply came almost immediately: received. I will append to filings and notify venue counsel. Keep the original email thread intact. I typed understood and added the incident report number and camera time. In the corner of the alcove, a small printer hummed awake. The manager must have cued something for me. Weeks ago, before any invitations, Dorian and I had drafted documents for a donor-advised fund. I had not known the date I would sign, only the reason. I opened his secure link now. The charter filled the screen, a simple purpose, a lean board, a clear intake. I scrolled to the end and read the last line aloud to myself before I touched the box. I consent and agree. My name appeared in tidy letters, time-stamped to the minute. A confirmation email arrived with a modest chime. I added the sentence I had carried around in my pocket for a month. Protect older women from financial coercion. I typed it into the mission field, then spoke at once, a private oath. Submit. The page refreshed to a green check. Another email arrived, this one with a reference number and an attached one-page confirmation. The door opened a hand's width. The manager slid an envelope onto the desk. Your print, he said then, withdrew. I eased out the single sheet and set it flat. My husband's fountain pen came out of my clutch with its familiar weight. I placed it across the bottom margin, a small human paperweight, and let breath leave my ribs in a long, clean line. Grief did not argue with purpose. It stood beside it and nodded. I forwarded the foundation confirmation to Dorian and to myself for record keeping. I did not text Corbin. Silence is not a punishment. Tonight, it was a policy. I closed the laptop the room provided and gathered my things. The pen went back into the clutch where it clicked against the clasp like a tiny door closing. Out in the hall, the carpet absorbed the noise of other people's decisions. A woman's laugh peeled thinly and then faded. The lobby board still read, "On hold letters," steady as if they had always said so. My phone buzzed with a calendar alert, hearing scheduling inbound. A moment later, Dorian's text clarified it. Temporary orders 9:00 a.m., Monday. I nodded to the empty hallway and typed, "I'll be there with my witness." At the foyer edge, I paused, testing for anger and finding none that needed feeding. What I felt was cleaner protection shaped into steps someone else could walk later if they had to. My case had a number. The fund had a name. The pen had done its small work without drawing a single line. I checked the email from the hotline, my words summarized in neutral paragraphs, the time, the location, the names, the offer of advocacy if I chose it. I saved the PDF to a folder labeled simply Tonight. Then I squared my shoulders and turned toward the doors. The hallway clock over the elevators ticked past. 9:07. I smoothed my black dress, felt the ridge of the pen against my palm, and walked toward the light pooling under the ballroom doors. A server wheeled an idle cart aside and gave me a small professional nod. I returned it. No speeches, no warning. I did the simple things, silenced my phone, set my shoulders, and took one slow breath. When the door attendant reached for the handle, I said, one moment looked back at the quiet room that had held my voice, then faced forward. The board read, "On hold," and meant it. The text banner bloomed across my screen while the foyer air held its breath. Temporary orders hearing. Juam, Harris County. A judge's name followed, then a docket number like a stern drumbeat. I took a screenshot, made a new folder labeled Court Tomorrow, and dropped the image inside. Around me, the hotel's quiet machinery clicked and sighed. The party's noise, a muted memory locked beyond the ballroom doors. I exhaled once a measured line and let the relief become focus. I moved to the marble pillar out of foot traffic and typed 2 lines to Dorian. Confirm witness. Serve notice to venue counsel. I'll be there at 8:35. His bubbles rose almost instantly. On it. Bring ID. Black and white attire advised. The practical note steadied me more than comfort ever could. I tucked my phone against my palm and took one step toward the lobby board where On Hold still glowed like a lighthouse, with its beam-trained inward warning ships already in the harbor. Calla stood there pale but upright, her clipboard now an empty shield. "Will you come to court in the morning?" I asked. She looked past me toward the ballroom and swallowed. "Yes," she said, a voice you could build a small bridge on. I gave the time and room, watched her enter them carefully, then added, "Bring your phone, the audio and the text threads, nothing more." She nodded. The nod felt larger than the motion. In chaos, consent is architecture. At the business center desk, the printer hummed like a beehive. I opened the incident report email, pulled the photo timestamps, and sent 3 jobs to print. The venue manager watched the pages ride the rollers, then initialed the time they were produced. His pen strokes were neat, efficient administration instead of theater. I stacked the warm pages, squared their corners with the back of my fingernail, and felt order settle in like weight distributed evenly across a shelf. I slid 1 envelope across the counter and fed it 3 documents: the hearing notice, the incident report, and my pre-wedding declined receipt with its delivered in red lines. On the flap, I wrote the docket number in careful block letters the way I used to label jars when my husband and I canned peaches the summer the AC failed. You learn to work with heat. You learn to mark what matters. A relative tried to intercept by the foyer threshold voice rubbed soft at the edges. "Marlene, maybe we can just talk." I kept my tone even. Tomorrow in court. I didn't justify, explain, or trade blame. I let the sentence stand and watched it do the work I used to try to do with paragraphs. Behind the relative, the ballroom lights were flat and honest. Without the spotlight, performance looks like furniture waiting to be moved. The manager assigned a guard to walk me toward valet, not as spectacle, simply as policy. His jacket didn't flap. His shoes didn't squeak. Presence has its own grammar. People parted the way they do for hotel carts and emergency quiet. No one needed to be told we were done performing. At the revolving doors, I paused long enough to check my clutch ID, the docket envelope, my husband's fountain pen. What I chose to leave behind, argument explanation. Any apology I did not owe. A buzz rattled in my palm. Kala's text blinked in, I confirm attendance, 9:00 a.m. I possess audio and chat logs, will bring phone. I replied, received. Dorian chimed one word, filed. The word fit the moment like a snapped lid. I felt the shape of tomorrow take hold, a room with a clock, a judge with a bench, a table with edges that hold paper straight. The valet stand smelled faintly of rubber and rain. I lifted my face to the night air and listened to Houston breathe late traffic on Post Oak, a siren far off the low electrical hum of the hotel skin. The guard stayed a courteous pace behind me while I studied the lights and thought about morning, arrive early, speak plainly, ask for nothing more than orders that match the facts. Mercy, if it shows up, would be welcome. But I was not going to court for mercy. Headlights curled through the portico. The valet pulled up smooth as a sentence landing on its period. I thanked the manager, nodded to security, and slid into the seat. The hearing time glowed again on my lock screen. 9:00 a.m. like chalk on slate. I set an alarm and a backup, then placed the phone face down on the leather beside the docket envelope. My hand found the fountain pen by touch. The metal was cool, familiar, like a promise you make to yourself and keep. The driver asked for my destination, and I gave my address, then added, "Please take the long way around the loop." He nodded in the mirror and guided us into a slow ribbon of traffic. Buildings slid by quiet witnesses, glass towers, a neon pharmacy, a diner with 3 customers. I breathed with the turns. No speeches, no rehearsals, only the work of readying myself. I unlocked my phone and created a calendar event titled Court Bring Witness Set Arrival for 8:35 and turned the alarm on. At a red light, my reflection floated in the window in Houston's glow. The cheek Corbin struck held a mild warmth. I did not prod it, no. Pain asks for attention. Dignity decides how much it gets. The light changed. The car moved. I thought of my husband and the way he would tap a fountain pen against his notebook when something needed to be said once. I rested the pen across my palm and let its weight steady the line I would hold tomorrow. Gray stone and winter air meet me at the courthouse steps. Black and white clothes, docket envelope in my clutch, my husband's fountain pen steady in my palm. Yeah, security hums with trays and murmurs. Kala texts parking 2 minutes. I nod to no one breathe and walk inside. She arrives with quick steps, hair pulled back, resolve plain. We sit on a hallway bench, shoulders square, and quietly review what matters: the audio of their plan, the internal texts about seating me by the door, the time-stamped incident report, each word trimmed to truth. She exhales. I nod. We are aligned. Corbin and Isolde appear with counsel, trying for soft tones, maybe resolve privately. Dorian, binder in hand, cuts them off inside. The courtroom is smaller than television. The judge enters. Time settles. Dorian leads bank alert decline. Receipt trustee statement. Facts take their places, cool and exact. The incident report, still of my glasses sliding across marble, makes the room hush the way truth does. Kala testifies next. Her voice steadies as she confirms the recording, the texts, the seating plan. Opposing counsel tries to paint misunderstanding and wedding stress. The judge stops it. Stick to the record. The room obeys. My pen rests warm in my palm. I feel steadier than the walls. Orders come like guardrails, no contact for coercion. No fund requests all records preserved, follow-up hearing set. No speeches, no shame, just structure. We step into the sun. Kala says, "Thank you for keeping it about paper." Paper travels farther, I reply. My phone buzzes, unknown number, meet me. There's more you should know. I type, name a public place. Send. The courthouse doors close behind us. Dorian says, you have what you need. If it's noise forward, it and walk. I nod. My clutch holds ID orders receipts and the pen that reminds me who I am. What I don't carry apology. Hope that spectacle becomes love. The rail bell chimes. The morning has already forgiven enough to continue. When the train comes, I'll ride 2 stops and walk. If the message is truth, daylight can hold it. If it's bait, my line will hold again. I choose a patio table in open sunlight, my clutch resting over the docket envelope. Cars hum down Main Street, distant but steady. The woman who texted me steps from a rideshare and walks over without hesitation. Ophelia knocks. She takes the chair opposite. Some things should be said in daylight, she murmurs. I nod once, then say them. She slides a slim folder from her bag. Inside, printed screenshots of internal planner texts, drafted timelines to stage me notes about keeping her off-camera strategies to push the stylist before she speaks. The timestamps are after midnight. They copied me by mistake, she says quietly. For the record, not revenge. The coffee between us goes cold. I say, it matters. Gratitude stays in my tone but never spills to gloating. I tell her I won't post them online. Documents belong in files, not on feeds. She nods. We agree she'll email them to Dorian and keep an original sealed. Boundaries make both of us exhale at the same moment like the end of a held cord. My phone buzzes. A voicemail from Corbin plays through faint speaker hiss, half apology, half justification, as if sincerity were a coin to flip. I save it to the case folder. I do not call back. As I walk to my car, I open the foundation portal. A name glows in the queue referred from last night's hotline. I approve her first grant, 1 month's rent, and a consult with a financial advocate. The confirmation pings. Purpose, not punishment, can breathe now. At home light lays across the old wood floors of my Heights bungalow. I file Ophelia's documents behind the incident report and the declined receipt, closing the drawer gently. Then at the kitchen table, I write a letter to Corbin. It says therapy public apology read in court repayment of venue costs 12 months no ask. I sign it, slide it into Dorian's file, not the mailbox. Some words must wait for structure to hold them. Harlan's voice crackles from the living room speaker. He confirms the audit log and freeze controls. You're fully protected, he says, and so is the trust. Thank you, I answer. When the call ends, I glance at one last tab. The hotel's statement cites safety and legal compliance. Comments lean toward boundaries and healing. The noise has gentled. I close the browser. A 3 winter sun pools on the porch. I set my husband's fountain pen back in its dish and sit with tea. The city breathes in low rhythm. I don't wait for a text. I don't fear one. The quiet belongs to me, and for the first time in days, it stays. Looking back, here's what I know. Dignity beats, spectacle boundaries, protect love, and paperwork speaks louder than pressure. If someone pushes you to fund their future that isn't family, it's coercion. Keep records. Ask for help. Choose purpose over revenge. I can't rewrite my son's choices, but I can write my own to stay calm, use the law, and lift other women who feel cornered. What would you have done in my shoes? Have you ever drawn a hard line with people you love? Share your thoughts. If this story resonated, drop a 1 or tell me where you're watching from. If it didn't, say why. And if you want more true human stories with real lessons, please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what comes next.